my name is Benjamin with the Roanoke Valley Chess Club, and today we are looking at let me make sure I'm actually recording the right screen. Cool, I like that, that's good. The Gunsberg Steinitz match, World Championship match, and I'm going to give spoiler alerts even though I'm not going to show a lot of Steinitz's wins. There's a reason for that. A lot of his wins were basically just his opponent didn't quite understand these slow locked pawn structure positions, made a strategic error, Steinitz saw it, and, ground out a long ending. Like, if you look at the move lengths of a lot of these games, they're ridiculous. And there's a lot of repetitions and stuff like that. I'm going to flip the board here because, Instead, I'm going to show a lot of games where Gunsberg won a nice game. Because, I kind of want to show that Steinitz really he wasn't that far ahead of his contemporaries, if at all, to be honest. He just was able to endure these long format matches a lot better. And this was played in 1890 and early 1891. It was played in December and January. Anyway. So we actually wound up getting something that I think we would probably see in a World Championship match today. I think we have seen it in modern World Championship matches. And it's a little bit slow. It's a little bit offbeat, but it's certainly a way to play it for both colors. I'd favor slightly the white pieces because I think you can get a really nice center with c3 and d4. And castles, of course, gives you the open f file, so I'm not opposed to the way this position is. Here I probably would play bishop to b3 and allow the exchange of that knight for the bishop, because I'm not 100% sure the bishop's doing anything important. That, and you lose a lot of tempo by moving it other places, and if black takes it, well, I'm going to argue that that's actually good for white, because after here, I like this rook. I'm going to play c3, d4, and we're going to wind up with this center with b3, c3, d4, e4. But our king is safer, and I'm going to argue that the two knights in that position are better than the bishop and knight. Instead, Gunsberg played bishop b5 because bishops are better. And then we got this, queen b6. That's a little bit crazy. Queen d2. I'm thinking queen e1 is probably preferable in my opinion, but we are giving this up, so you never know. Steinitz not taking this pawn, which is bad for reasons, probably because... Why is it bad? Oh, yeah. Silly rabbit, tricks are for kids, and if you tried that, I mean... Yeah, the queen is, trapped, so you can't take that, so... I knew you couldn't take it. I was trying to figure out exactly how. Rook to e1 was played. And again, you've got the same problems that you cannot play queen takes pawn. So, queen a6. c3, f6, bishop there. This is very normal stuff. f6 is a little bit... Never play f6. Come on, guys. Ugh. Proving why Steinitz was the worst world champion. f6. And Steinitz was arguing, I'm solid. No, Steinitz, f6 is just bad. Like, look at your light squares. They're terrible. Bishop c2, reasonable c5. Usually, though, white would maybe like to wait to play bishop c2. But white wants to play d4, and bishop c2 does support the e-pawn, so it's reasonable. b4, which is, very 1800s of them. But, I mean, it's a good move. It's a good move. Takes it, knight retreats. I like a4, but I'm a sucker for obvious threats. Preventing the black king from castling, and white plays very, very reasonably. Hits the knight, which has to go to this terrible, terrible square, and then d4. I'm not necessarily a big fan of rook d8, but on the other hand, what are you doing as black? What else are you doing as black? Rook c8 is pretty reasonable. I guarantee you Engine probably says rook d8 is okay. Yeah, okay. Engine says rook d8 is okay. Going after the f file because it's no longer needed on e1. Ooh. Queen f2, I like it. Rook c8. Yeah, exactly. Rook to c1, go into the open file. Queen a6. I don't know what the queen's doing there. Doesn't even threaten the pawn. Queen b6. Yep. Queen b6 to a6 to... Yeah. I mean, Steinitz is just getting outclassed here. Like, this is just... Strategically, Steinitz is being crushed. Like, white's got a good center. White's pieces are pretty solid. White's got the open files. Black's king is in the center. His development's pretty bad. I mean, yeah, white's pieces are a little inactive, but that's very quickly and easily remedied with, like, e5 at some point. And then you play either knight to e4, probably the d2 knight to e4. You're doing quite well here. Knight e2, just supporting the center. D5, I would have considered e5, but ed is probably pretty good. Knight d6, and we see why Steinitz sacrificed a pawn. And, yeah. Man. Steinitz just has a good position. And this is really good. So, Steinitz allowed... with this move, didn't see the threat. He saw that the rooks were in tension, and he's correct. He would actually prefer, as the player with the black pieces, to have a rook on the c-file because it's an open file, and he doesn't want white to have complete control of it. On the other hand, he doesn't see how, so he tries to defend his rook with his king. And that leads to a mistake. I would think probably king here is better, but I think white's just better anyway. Like, I don't know. I mean, okay. Okay. There's not a lot of good moves, to be 100% honest with you. Like I said, I would have traded, but that's pretty... But this is like the worst defensive move in the game. And Steinitz was the guy who argued, no, these attacks are unsound because you can always defend. You can always defend. My friend, my frienda, you found... probably the worst defensive move possible, simply because a5 traps the queen, and so he's forced to sacrifice a piece, and from here it's just really good work converting this ending from Gunsberg, who just, like I said, outplayed Steinitz the entire match, the entire game, and Steinitz just crumbled. Like, that was embarrassing. No, we're not going to save the analysis. So we're going to actually look at a game no, this was another Gunsberg win. And this one was pretty quick. It was a Queen's Gambit accepted. Though I guess technically it transposes to an Albin counter Gambit, which you could get after like that, or which is not really a move, but yeah. And they trade queens, and everybody's happy. Gunsberg has active development. Okay, so what? We've just traded pawns, and now black is equal. Yeah. Yeah. And Steinitz just allows black to get a lead in development, active pieces, and this game is really brutal. And we get to see another flaw with the way Steinitz played the game as well. Also, knight g4, really good. Bishop there, check. e4, ich verboten. So, I mean, okay, so it is the only move, but king b3 is ridiculous. It's like, why? No. And instead of trying to, like, play a3 to get the king to safety, and it says black is equal, Steinitz plays, again, one of the worst defensive moves on the board. And the king goes back, which I actually think is the best move. Yeah. And Steinitz just allows himself to get attacked. f2 is terrible. Knight h4. Just allowing this threat. And you cannot take this bishop because, well, basically this, and Gunsberg is up a piece, and we saw how good he is up a piece. So instead, Steinitz played king takes c3, which is, I think, the best move. But you got to be trying to get in b3, king b3, you know, try to tuck your king in safety, man. Your king cannot be out there like that. Bishop e6, potentially allowing, and I would have played like king here instantly, or b3, or developed something. No, Steinitz, f4, rar. What? Knight f6, bringing the knight back to a more active posting. f5, which is, again, ridiculous. I maybe would have given a check first. But, you know, bishop d5 is perfectly reasonable. g4, rar. Again, I don't know what Steinitz is doing here. Bishop to e7, trying to get on the diagonal of the king, the long diagonal. And again, I'd be trying to get my king to safety. Finally, king c2. Unfortunately, we have the same problem we had earlier in the game, where king c2 really doesn't actually do anything to make the king safer, because now the king literally has to go out again. And just, that's the problem, is Steinitz didn't take the time to make his king safe earlier in the game, and now it's just forever unsafe. And knight d7 is really nice. He's going to c5 again. g5 with no threat. I mean, I would have checked here. I think it's the best move. But, I mean, okay, it was the 1800s. You played f6 because it's funny. Bishop g4, hoping that you're going to take. No, now he finally sees knight c5. I think what Gunsberg wanted to do was stabilize the king side before he went in for his attack. King a3, again, ridiculous. Rook there, again, ridiculous. b3, knight a4, which is a really nice check. Forces the king out even further. Rook there, forces either b4 or the rook back out. And this is just dead lost for black. Two legal moves. This allows every discovery ever. I'm not even sure which one's better. Yeah, I was probably going to go there because it's funny. It wins a rook. But I think it wins even more than that because, yeah, I just play here. Only legal move. And is this mate? Yeah, that's mate. And if you go here, I think everything wins. I think that is... It's not mate yet, but that is not... I saw that, so... Yeah. Steinitz is getting mated. And see, that's the problem with bringing your king out like that. And Steinitz was like, no, this is the best defensive resource. My king is perfectly safe on c3 and b3 in an open board. No, Steinitz, you're just bad. Game 6. Finally, Steinitz wins a game. And it's in one of these weird, like, half collie, half weird positions. Except Steinitz didn't have the white pieces. Steinitz had the black pieces and actually played for an active position. And Steinitz got his active position with more space. But I think White's doing okay. Like, White's position isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think, at a minimum, White just has a... White's probably, for sure, drawing if he just doesn't make any positional errors. And I think everything's fine until you play f3, which is just terrible. Like, why play f3? There is no reason to play f3 in this position. Knight f3, maybe, is fine, and it kicks the rook away, and, you know, you're going to shuffle and eventually draw. But no, f3, why? Losing a pawn for no real reason. And, okay, yes, you do activate the bishop, but I'm not sure it was worth a pawn. And then you immediately retreat the queen, when you've actually got some try at convincing me you've got an active position. I mean, heck, I'd be looking at bishop h6. It's probably not good, but, you know, I'd be looking at it because it's interesting. Queen f2, bishop e3, it's somewhat reasonable. Queen there, perfectly reasonable. Bishop there, again, all very reasonable. Bishop there, bishop c6, bishop c2, queen e5, knight c2. This is kind of where some of the problems start for Gunsberg. Because, unfortunately, he undefends f3. And Steinitz sees a tactic. And I think Gunsberg is okay here. Like, it's tough, but it's okay. You just have to play correctly. I think you just try to trade queens, and I don't really see what's going on here. I do not believe in attack. I do not believe this. I don't believe this attack. I guess we want to try it. Like, that's the only move that makes any sense. I love it. The engine I have just doesn't even... I guess we go here if we want to avoid the draw. And material's equal, but Black's king is much safer. So, I mean... Took me a second, because the repetition is all I saw, and I'm like, well, h3, I guess we could play that. I was just trying to showcase that I think White's actually okay. But no, but Queen d7 was played, which is probably the... I'll give Gunsberg credit. It's a bad defensive move, but there's a reason he played it, and it's because he's defending h3. Like... Gunsberg wasn't a bad player because, I mean, he saw the queen h3 and he's like, I'm not suffering through that. Unfortunately, it allows queen h1 check and that. So Gunsberg defended a threat, but it's a threat that, while probably losing, I think he's still, he can still fight. So, yeah. No, we're not going to save that. And then I actually have to skip that one. We're going to flip the board back because white won this game, and it was a Queen's Gambit accepted. And it was one of these variations, and actually, I think black has a perfectly reasonable position. I don't see how black is losing in less than 30 moves in this position. That's how reasonable I think this position is. I probably would have tried to give white an isolated pawn, but, here it is. And then f6. Come on, guys. Proving why these players are not highly regarded. Well, Steinitz is either extremely well regarded as a world champion, or people think he was terrible. Guess which camp I fall into. But, Steinitz plays the correct move here, which is just taking the pawn, not even worrying about his knight, because he's got this discovered check. King goes into the corner, and, well, we're winning the piece back at a minimum. And Gunsberg realized this and was like, well, I don't want to be down a piece. I don't want to be down a piece in multiple. I don't want Steinitz to have multiple pawns for the piece, so I'm going to try to get active and creative. So he took the pawn on f2, which Steinitz, the baller that he didn't even take it, which I agree with, because if you take it, you're allowing black unnecessary counterplays, I like to call it. Knight d7, reasonable, giving the piece back on his own terms. Technically, I guess that's a desperado. And it makes material equal again, but Steinitz just has more space and better pawns. Knight f6, perfectly reasonable, and always sack the exchange. The reason why it's good is because, well, that knight was better than the rook. And you get to do that. And Gunsberg is just being crushed here. And Gunsberg plays rook g5, trying to prevent white from pushing this pawn. However, I accidentally moved too quickly, and I showed you the tactic. So this is really good tactical awareness from Steinitz. I'll give him credit. And there's no stopping e7, and white is going to promote. So that's the justification for all of this, right? Gunsberg undefends his back row, which has problems because you've got a pawn on the 7th and a king over here. So Gunsberg probably played, again, the worst defensive move, which was the style at the time. I would have taken the pawn and I would have lost, but I would have played better. So the reason why this is, I guess, removing the defender and decoy and an overworked theme all in one. And again, really nice finish doing that, yeah. Okay, credit where it's due. That's really well played by Steinitz. But we're going to go and look at two more games really briefly. And we get an Evans Gambit. There was actually quite a few Evans Gambits in this match. And we got the same variation as the previous match where Chigorin played the Evans. And Steinitz played this terrible Queen f6 move. Okay, Queen f6 is a book move. It's just not good. And Gunsberg plays extremely well, proving that he saw the previous match. Bishop e2, that's actually a really good defensive move. Or not defensive, but that's a good high class move. And then, yeah. And then just really good tactics from Gunsberg. Like, just... And this is what White wants in an Evans Gambit. White wants his pieces all doing everything. White's winning on the queen side, the center, and the king side. And look at Black's pieces. Black only has 2 active pieces, and this one's tied to the defense of the rook. And this one's kind of just sitting there on g4 doing nothing. Doesn't even care that the bishop's hanging, just takes the free knight. And allowing that, we've still got a situation where Black only has 2 active pieces. Black's completely cramped. Black's pieces can't do anything. This knight's really fantastic. It's a good position. Knight e6, you gotta try to do something, man. I'd go here, and yeah, I'd eventually lose, but the idea is, well, whoops, not that. The idea is after White does something, unsure what the best move exactly is. I'd probably play h4, but I don't know. Rook here is reasonable, I guess, and I'd play like, oh, we're going to overwrite that. There we go. And I'd play d5. And I try to break loose, but, you know. Instead, knight e6. Like, what? Rook fd1. Just going for the guts. Knight a8. Just put the knight in the corner pocket and undermine the rook. And that without forcibly wins an exchange. But it's worse than that. So, can y'all find the tactic? Now, I could find this tactic because I played it before. But Steinitz is just completely crushed here. You know, he defended his bishop, which is reasonable. But he probably shouldn't have. He probably should have played like bishop d8 or something really bad like that. Because it actually probably was forcibly winning a rook. Like, everything is bad. Oh my god, engine recommends king d8. That's when you know it's bad. A move that you know is forcibly losing is recommended by the engine. So, I think I've given you all enough time to find rook d7 check. Obviously, the king is the piece that has to take because the bishop can't because it's pinned. And then Gunsberg played rook d1. Brilliant victory. Bishop here, and I like white because rook takes, and then I don't know, knight here, best move, because I don't know. Steinitz made the right choice to resign. I don't even want to showcase this because of how bad of a move it is. Like, this is bad. There's a bajillion moves I could play as white here that I think win. Probably just knight takes check is the simplest. Yeah, so I'll go, I will showcase it. Yeah, I would have played knight takes, which I think is best, but something tells me just take the, yeah. What's better than winning a knight with discovered check, winning a knight by just playing pawn takes? Yeah, Steinitz rightfully resigned there. And then the last game we're going to look at is another game. It's a few games later. Gunsberg is trying to catch up at this point. Gunsberg was ahead until like game 12 or something like that. He was ahead for a good portion of this match. And then Steinitz just outlasted him. But Gunsberg made a valiant effort to try to win. Steinitz not wanting to go through the bishop g5 hell again, plays h6, queen a4, bishop b6, bishop b5. Again, Gunsberg's playing very actively, very aggressively, very in style. I like all of Gunsberg's moves so far. Knight f4. Like, Gunsberg's going to allow mate in one, yeah. And then queen g4 is actually reasonable. Knight there. Steinitz makes a half-hearted attempt to attack. I'm not so sure I agree with bishop b2. I think pretty simple is just d5. Because the bishop's really well placed on a3. So I'm not sure what the motivation to move it is. Bishop to e2. Again, a pretty solid idea. Just bring the bishop back. Now let's work on the queen side is done. Come on, knight e6. I just ate, man. King h1, allowing the king to go into the corner and be fine. Queen f5. And then Gunsberg actually plays a really good move here. So the problem is the queen is kind of locked out of the game. Like, you threaten it, it has to do something. And the problem is that square is covered. That square would be covered. And I'll play knight h4 to showcase it. So those two squares are covered. g5 is about to be covered. So if you go to g5, I think knight e4, I think, just straight up wins the queen. So all that's covered. Yeah, knight e4 just straight up wins the queen. So queen g5, yeah, loses a queen. Queen can't go here because that's just garbage. Like, really? Okay, so, I mean, yeah, the queen can go here, but it's terrible there. Really, queen can go... The engine doesn't mind it. Engine also doesn't mind this move. That's crazy. I would have played here, but that's because I see queen traps everywhere. Really? I thought queen g5, you play knight e4... Yeah, that's what I thought. I was a little confused as to why the engine was like, yeah, no, I can totally play this. Yeah. I saw queen h7, and I see all these queen traps. This is not a queen trap, but it's kind of bad. I'm trying to figure out how to exploit it. Bishop f1, I guess. Yeah, anyway, Steinitz took on f2 and Gunsberg trapped his queen. Like, this is a legal move that tries to save the queen, but bishop c4, and I don't think the queen has any legal squares where it won't get captured. So your best bet is to probably just take the rook and... Yeah. Like, Steinitz just played like a complete beginner in some of these games. Like, it was really bad. Black's up 2 pawns. That's the entire material imbalance. And Steinitz has moved a pawn, both his knights, his bishop, and his queen. Moved 5 pieces. 6 pieces. Sorry, I forgot this pawn. White, the only things that haven't moved are the a2 pawn, the h2 pawn, and this rook in the corner. Everything else has been moved. I think the only piece for white that hasn't moved multiple times, other than the pieces that are, is the queen. Like, white has really improved his position, whereas black's just been chasing material, moving his queen around. And I think this is really what puts the nail in the coffin on this queen f6 variation. is games like this, where white just gets a good position, and black just gets too greedy and loses the game. So that was certainly one of the matches of all time. We'll look at a different game later on today as well, because I want y'all to actually see good chess on this channel. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, when these are the best players in the world, I mean, can you really fault them? And, you know, they didn't have the benefit of modern theory or modern training, stuff like that. It was getting there, but in the newspapers, you know, you had your columns, but you listen to some of the things that they talked about with regards to, you know, how to play, you know, some of it was ridiculous. Anyway, I want y'all to take it easy. Have a nice day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.